Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Today I've got three things I'd like to speak to you about. And the first one, for those of you who like Charles Dickens and who are, getting ready for the Christmas kind of vibe, there is a lady on BookTube who is doing a Dickens Christmas read-along. And now, I've never participated in that sort of a thing. I've done book clubs. I don't really know exactly what a read-along is comprised of. But Katie, I'm going to link her stuff in the doobly-doo below. And she's doing the five, I'm pretty sure it's five novellas that Dickens wrote, I guess in the 1840s, that are his Christmas etude, I suppose. I don't think all of them are Christmas-y, because I think at that time ghost stories and mystery stories were part of what people would be reading and talking about. It's not sort of the Santa Claus based themes, that romance type themes that we have. So his big favorite, or most known, is A Christmas Carol, which we've all seen with different versions on TV and the movies. And then there are four others. So these novellas are about, she thought they were about 100, less than 100 pages each, 80 to 90 pages. And they're going to start on November 18th and do one novella a week leading up to Christmas. And I believe they are in publication order, which is kind of something that I hadn't really thought about ever doing. I mean, sometimes I read an author and I go back to their first books just because there's a thematic or a character reason to do that, but generally, yeah. So it's and she's got another Dickens project that she did this year past, which was reading all of Dickens' books in chronological order, publication date order. Anyways, it sounds kind of fun. I do have the Christmas story, what is that called? The Christmas Carol upstairs. I was just checking the shelves and I thought that I had purchased a book that had all the novellas in it. But, in thinking about it, I remember seeing it on the shelves at Bookmark, my local bookstore, and thinking, oh, I should get that. And then, sort of like checking around with the rest of the family, going whether they would be interested or not. And one of those group decision moments where I should have just done what I wanted to do instead of consulting with others. Oh, I don't know if it'll be on the bookshelf again. It was a nice little publication, a little hardcover with nice illustrations. Anyhow, you can get all of the Dickens books, I'm pretty sure, fairly easily, either online or at your local libraries or a bookstore, whatever. So hop on over to her channel and see what all she's got planned. So that's Katie, and what is the name of the channel? Live in the Books? I'll tell you, well, you'll see when you look below for the link. Okay, I'm an update on Nonfiction November. I spoke to you about the Beaver book in Britain, which was such a bust. I am reading the one that I most wanted to read, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm just kind of puttering my way through at breakfast and lunch, and this is the Rome, A History in 7 Sackings by Mathew Kneale, and I've just finished The Visigoths. Now, for years and years, I just thought I was a Visigoth. My relatives are Dutch, been in Holland for like billions of years, traced the family back to the 11th century. Yeah, well, if you do history that's longer than that, it wasn't actually the Visigoths who traveled into Holland. It was a different group of people whose name is not very memorable and doesn't sound as good as Visigoth. So I wrongly see myself as a Visigoth. I have to do some research and correct that. But anyhow, the Visigoths went the other way, down into Rome, and they were there a couple of times under the General Alaric, A-L-A-R-I-C. They have such, to us, dissonant sounding names, or there's so many vowels in some of the names. And anyways, I think it's great fun to just read about who was where and when was what, and there's some connection to archaeology today. Of course, Rome being what they call a living city, that the inhabitants are still there doing archaeology, is both very difficult in terms of, the traffic and the infrastructure and so on. But through the course of archaeology, they have been able to establish some of the truths that historical writers of the time may or may not have been telling the truth about. So because again, like this is a whole fascinating piece about who actually writes the history, usually the victors, and usually there's some kind of agenda attached to, we want to make the pagans look really bad, so this writer is going to make the pagans look super duper bad, or vice versa. There's going to be somebody who was of a different Christian sect at the time, and they're like, oh yeah, that group of Christians, they were the ones to blame for all of this. So I'm glad that I don't have to read the entire transcript, but it's fun to have someone else who's done the cherry picking to see, who wrote what and what their point of view was, and then match it up against the archaeology, because as this writer states, archaeology is not aligned. Archaeology as a pure practice is not aligned with religion or politics. Well, I say that with some doubt. The funding certainly can get political or religious or what have you. I don't think it's quite as pure a science as some other things. Anyhow, in the interest of giving him the benefit of the doubt, archaeology for our purposes in this book is outside of the realm of religion and politics. So he's drawing upon excavations. And Rome at the time that the Visigoths jumped in did not have any burial grounds inside the city walls. And so there were uncovered in recent years, there have been mass graves that have been dated back to the 400s BC, no, AD, and it had to be AD. And they show that that's just not a practice the Romans would have done ordinarily with choice. So there's some validity to the idea that Rome really was sacked and it was really a tough spot to be in. And yeah, and then another part of me was like, why am I reading this particular book at this particular moment in our own history, where we've got, the collapse of societies and political systems and stuff, and the political, what do you call it? Is it a political theology, a political point of view? It's like all the rhetoric around what makes civilization and democracy, and it's just blowing its head off. And so it's kind of a bit tough to read this book. It's not a bedtime book. It's definitely not even sure it's a breakfast book, because it's a bit tough to start the day off with, someone. Anyways, and so maybe it's really a lunchtime book. That will slow down the reading considerably. So, but I am really enjoying it. I do like this kind of a history book. The author is not involved in any of the telling of the facts. Thank goodness. Okay, the other two things I brought forward today are two Gothic. They're not Gothic. One of them's Gothic. Graphic novels. The first one is called Crumbs by Danie Stirling. It's a YA romantic. Are those little hearts? Well, they could be wrapping around the fella. So she is a magical person, and he is as well. And she has been given what her name is, Ray, and she's a person of color, and this is Laurie. So it's sort of a name switch. And look, I hope I haven't got that wrong. Anyhow, it's not a problem. So that's like really great. This is a book that's just dealing with skin color, no problems attached to that. And what we've got is a society where there's a council, and the magic is used to tone down weather events, and just it's to tone down earthquakes. Just it's more of a sort of used for catastrophe avoidance than you can use it to help stir your bowl of soup if you want to. But so it's quite a different. It's more of a civil service kind of a magic, in that it helps the inhabitants of the community. And one of the things that Ray has to come to terms with is that when you go into the civil service, you get a memory, sort of a memory block, so that you are, as a civil servant, you are disassociated from any kind of political or influence. You're removed from any kind of influencing sphere. And then when you leave the civil service, you get a different kind of memory block that means that you are not a risk of giving up state secrets, sort of thing. So she's having to come to terms with, does she really want to do this kind of work because she's good, she can tell the future, and so that helps to prevent these kinds of environmental catastrophes. But she also knows that means that she's going to have to, her family's going to kind of forget her, and then when she comes out of the civil service, she also does not really get to re-engage with her family. But she's fallen in love, and he works at a bakery, and the bakery has just all the most delicious cakes and cupcakes, and so it's just a very sweet relationship story. There isn't any kind of huge crisis. We don't see any there's no pelting of lightning and storms and eruption of evil doers and so on. It's a pretty plateauish kind of storyline. The plot is fairly tame. It's just a very nice, pleasant read. I would say that it's right up there with those books that I talk about every once in a while, about books that don't crush your soul. It doesn't also stimulate you a whole ton, but it's just a nice read. It's geared towards young adults, and I should show you, because it's a graphic novel, I should show you what the graphics are like. And it's pleasant. There's lots of you're still reading a lot of the text, and you're still getting an opportunity to imagine parts of the story yourself, so that I think most of the pages are like that. This one's maybe a little hard to read, but the reader gets to do a lot of this sort of imagination as to what the world is like and where the people are in their storyline in terms of setting, and there's some fun stuff that's going on in terms of the magic and the community that they live in. So I recommend this. I'd say it's about 3.5, 4 out of 5 stars, and it's for sure a book that's not gonna, leave you feeling hit by a truck. Okay, this one is Goth. It's called The Mall Goth. It's by Kate Leth, and the coloring is by Diana Sousa, and the lettering is by Robin Crank. And we have Liv. L-I-V is her name, Liv, and she's this young lady here. And I saw this on the bookshelves, I think 2 Christmases ago, and picked it up for my daughter-in-law, because this basically was my daughter-in-law back when she was a teenager. And she read this, and she was just like, this is my story. This is me. This is when she was in high school, the way she interacted with friends, the way she was feeling down in the dumps, the way she was feeling not involved in her community. But she wasn't like a bad person. She was just not finding her place at that time. Just that whole square peg, round hole. Somewhere in the world, there's some kind of a joke about a square and a round peg, and one can fit in the other if you only know how. Liv does not know how to fit in, and she's falling in love with somebody, but it turns out that perhaps this person is unfaithful. She's getting the attention of a teacher, and perhaps that's inappropriate. And there's a few other things that are happening that are just turning her world swirly gigs, not upside down, because they're all kind of events that are they're not extreme. They're things that a kid would encounter sort of as an everyday sort of thing, or if they don't, parents divorcing, their buddies' parents are divorcing. So it's that kind of tension in terms of how do you respond to divorcing parents? How do you respond to boyfriends when you're still very young and not very experienced? Now, the situation with the teacher did not get explicit in any way, but it was certainly something that I felt was worth including in this book, because if you're of this age and you're starting to get attention from an older adult and you're starting to feel creeped out about it, this takes you through those feelings and what are your alternatives. And one of the things about teenagers is that because of the lack of experience, there is definitely that confusion of, is this okay? Especially if it's coming from an adult who is not a bully or not, like isn't overtly a problem. It's kind of insidious and sideways, and you just go like, something's not right. I don't feel, something doesn't feel right. So I think this is a great book, and I should just say that did not happen to my daughter-in-law, but she had friends who were having experiences that were similar to this, and that was the discussion that they were having, was like, is this really happening? Am I imagining things? And what are we going to do in the face of that? And how do I protect myself? What about the other girls? So that kind of discussion point is taking place. I truly, truly loved this book, partly because my daughter-in-law has got this shy, she's small, she's sweet, she's so kind, she's so empathetic, she's just got consideration for everything and everybody, and she's always willing to look on the compassionate side of the coin, except when it's inappropriate. And then she is just like an effing tiger, and it just comes out of nowhere, She's got it figured out in her head, and she's always operating at a like the world is going to be a good place because it's going to be a good place. But boy howdy, if you like step on the wrong toe because of hatred or lack of love or cruelty or anything like that, well, she is a spitfire. And so as I read this, I was just like sharing my daughter-in-law's childhood and just feeling like so gifted to be part of that. So I think there are a lot of kids out there like this. I think this is a great book for teenagers, young teenagers. Why not? I mean, they're the ones who are quite often, the younger teenagers are quite often in this entrapment situation more so than the older girls, because the older girls are not really paying attention to older men. They've got their own group of social things happening. I think this is a great book for parents too, or aunts and uncles, because it gives you some insight into just what's going on in the heads of these kids who look so disaffected or are dressed so differently, and what does that actually mean. And I think it was in here, now I could be lying about this, where it was really simple. She's sitting in the car with her mom, and her mom is going, how was your day? What was school like? Blah, 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 mom. And the kid is going, it was fine. And what she really means is, I have such a headache. Would you please be quiet? It's like the words that come out of our mouths is rarely what the intentions are. And so that as adults, we quite often do not hear what the kids are saying to us. And the kids think they're being really clear, but in fact, it's muddy. So I recommend that one. That for me was a 5 out of 5. Now, not everybody has a tiny, sweet little girl on their hands, and Ryan is quite a woman now. But I think that you can empathize with Liv and her character. So that's it for me this week. I am headed to Toronto for about 5 days to visit my mom. And I think I'll be bumping into my sister. So it'll be a bit of a family thing. And I'm traveling at I'm traveling at 4 a.m. tomorrow and at midnight on Sunday. I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done, but I'm going to take the Rome book with me, and I think I'm not going to take a fiction book with me. We probably have to do some book shopping for my mom, and so I think we go to Value Village for that. I'm not sure, but something that's just come across in one of my book clubs is the book, and I don't have the author's name in front of me, The Berry Pickers. And it's a Canadian book, and we checked in at the library, and it is turning out to be an amazingly popular book for book clubs. So I think at the moment, and what the library does for us is makes a kit and then has some supporting documents with all the books, and it comes in a bag. And at the moment, there's 176 book club requests for 4 or 7 kits. So if you're looking for a recommendation on something that would be book club successful, it looks like the Berry Picker is going to be a really popular choice. So that's just a hot tip from the racing track. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you hopefully next week. Fingers crossed. Bye-bye for now.